Hey, what's up? How you doing? I've recently been reading the Percy Jackson series, which I skipped out on when it originally came out. I knew of the franchise and knew it was good. I was just too busy playing Sonic Unleashed and watching Dragon Ball Z to read any of Rick Riordan's books. So I finally decided to read them 20 years later, and here's how it went. My first real exposure to Percy Jackson was actually the 2010 movie, which I enjoyed. So far, I've only read the first 6 books, Heroes of Olympus, The Red Pyramid, and watched the first season of the TV series. I've enjoyed all of them so far, and it's been interesting to see how Rick Riordan's writing has evolved and changed across individual books and sagas. There was a certain grittiness to the first Percy Jackson series, probably due to it being written in the early 2000s, but also because Rick Riordan's books dedicated a lot of time tackling harsh and serious topics and relating it to its coming-of-age story, like growing up with broken families, dyslexia and ADHD, failing support systems, and real dangers of the world while intertwining it with a modern interpretation of Greek mythology. They genuinely address the emotions and impacts these situations have on these characters, and it's great. As the series went on, it definitely still covered real serious topics, but they felt less focused on in comparison to its fantastical adventure elements. The Lightning Thief was a really good introduction to this world and story in general. It helps that it isn't bogged down by continuity, so it focuses more on building up this unique setting, and it's a really creative world. My knowledge of Greek mythology and history isn't the best, so I might miss out on references and parallels that exist in this series, but they do a great job explaining it whenever relevant, and leaving small references for people who do know to enjoy. The utilization of Greek mythology is amazingly done. At first I thought the idea of the entire Greek pantheon being in America was kind of silly, but the more I thought about it and with the way it's explained in-universe, it's actually genius. Greek tales were filled with petty gods, cruel tragedies, and complex moralities, so it makes sense their influence would be present in a society as complicated as North America's, and I appreciate the trust in children's intelligence to understand this analogy with the real world. Also, there's a lot of fun ideas. Percy Jackson is a wonderful protagonist, dealing with a lot of personal issues like his abusive stepdad, his absent father and single mother, being mislabeled as a troubled kid, and navigating through life with his ADHD and dyslexia symptoms that a lot of kids and young adults could understand. He's also very refreshing and engaging to follow, a hero to his core that doesn't want to be a hero, very emotionally intelligent and kind, but also very strong-willed and fierce. It's interesting to see him overcome the forces trying to kill him or control him, and even destiny itself sometimes, in a confusing world that he is an integral part of, but that also doesn't really care for him half the time. The journey Percy takes in The Lightning Thief is also really cool, filled with great moments that start with him discovering that he is a demigod, to his adventures going from New York to LA in search of the underworld so he could confront Hades about stealing Zeus's lightning bolt and kidnapping his mother. Each version of the story is mostly similar, well, the movie plays out quite differently, but all three have their unique qualities and are great in their own ways. I mean, obviously the book is the best, but I love all three. I'll get into spoilers soon, but to go over the movie and TV series for a bit, the movie has a lot more deviations from the book, but the plot and themes are still largely the same. It's a pretty fun, if kind of generic, teen fantasy action adventure movie, and the script has a lot of holes that aren't deal breakers but do add up to make it obvious. To be more specific, the biggest problem it has is that it removes a lot of the depth to the characters and lore the series is based off of, to the point where I'd say it does bastardize the original mythology. But the movie was genuinely entertaining and adds its own original ideas, which help keep it engaging and interesting. The TV series is more faithful to the source material, and so it accurately translates its more imaginative tone and ideas, and technically has more depth than the movie does, but it presents it in a less interesting way. There's a lot of tell, don't show in this series when it comes to explaining the lore and the characters' motivations. It comes across as really awkward and forced. Alright, so let's talk spoilers. The first part of the story before Percy goes to Camp Half-Blood is pretty solid in all three versions. I will say, I think the movie has my favorite opening. It completely removes the mystery of who Percy's father is, but honestly I don't really care about that. And this version of Poseidon is actually really protective of Percy, which is a refreshing change from his original character. The gods in the Percy Jackson series are usually portrayed as arrogant and selfish and irresponsible, which is accurate to the actual mythology, and Poseidon was not really an exception. He's one of the better gods in the franchise, but when you first meet him in the book, he's very cautious of his own son and not exactly the most remorseful for what he put Percy through. There was no clear sign of love or approval, nothing to encourage me. It was like looking at the ocean. Some days you could tell what mood it was in. Most days, though, it was unreadable. Mysterious. I got the feeling Poseidon really didn't know what to think of me. He didn't know whether he was happy to have me as a son or not. But I do think that's really interesting. I also like how it shows that Percy has a special connection with water even before he discovered his lineage. That makes perfect sense to me and is a nice addition to his character. Whereas in the book and TV series, he never really exhibited any traits that would indicate he was Poseidon's son, so it made their relationship feel not as significant. We also get to meet Grover, and I really like their chemistry in the movie. It helps that this is my favorite rendition of Grover. The book does a good job of grabbing the reader's attention by opening with Percy getting attacked by his teacher, who turns out to be a monster, and how he goes from scared kid to innate badass once he grabs a sword, and then everyone plays it off like nothing happened. She flew straight at me. I did the only thing that came naturally. I swung the sword. She exploded into yellow powder, vaporized on the spot. I was alone. There was a ballpoint pen in my hand. Nobody was there but me. Besides that, though, I just don't really have much to say about this portion of the book. It's not bad, it's just that it's the baseline for comparison. The TV series is my least favorite. I do like how it starts with the opening narration from the book. It doesn't really portray Percy's dyslexia very well, which the movie does, instead showing how Percy notices the supernatural world as a way to make him stand out. I do like how it fleshed out Percy's childhood through flashbacks and the hardships he and his mother experienced in their lives. Poseidon in the show is also my least favorite of the three. He seems more caring for Percy than in the book, but not as regretful for his actions as in the movie. It just makes him not as interesting as the book or likable as the movie, but he's not bad. What I don't like, though, is how they made Percy more subservient to his dad's approval and the amount of hero worship they give him. It makes sense that after everything he's been through, Percy would want his dad to answer him, but they play it more as him mainly wanting his validation. In the movie, he straight up doesn't care, which fits well for his arc being more about appreciating his mother more. We see in the beginning of the film that while he does love his mother, he's not the most sympathetic towards her, and once he finds out she's been keeping him safe his whole life, and she's been kidnapped by Hades, he goes off on his own to save her. No official quest needed. I like this. It shows more agency on Percy's part and emphasizes how integral Sally Jackson is. She's a character I love and always am happy when she appears, so it's good to see more respect being put on her name. But the biggest problem the show has, which actually is detrimental to Percy's arc, is how they keep playing up how he's this special hero that is destined to be both great in-universe and with how the story treats him. There's a lot of scenes where characters tell him that he's important, which he is, but they don't tackle all the baggage that comes with that. Percy also just knows a lot about Greek mythology, and so he automatically has an edge in most situations, and is rarely ever challenged. The book made it clear that him being a son of one of the big three is a terrible thing that really just paints a giant target on his back more than anything. The attack had scared everybody. It sent two messages. One, that I was the son of the sea god, and two, monsters would stop at nothing to kill me. They could even invade a camp that had always been considered safe. And Percy barely knowing anything made him more compelling and was a convenient way for the audience to learn about the world too. It removes one of Percy's crucial attributes, which is his ability to adapt quickly to the situation and problem solve. Even the movie did a better job showing that, like in Percy's fight with the Minotaur, him getting the pearl in the museum and subsequent fight with the Hydra, and the Medusa fight. Percy in the show often just has the answers and explains how he came to that conclusion with no effort. They don't translate Percy's sense of humor either, so he doesn't even sound like himself half the time, or even like an actual 12-year-old. The 16-year-old acted more like he was 12 than him. I don't want to disrespect the actors. They all did a great job, it's just that certain aspects of the writing were lacking. Percy has more humor in the movies than the TV series, but both are good at showing how heroic and noble he is. Annabeth in the movie is fine, but let's be honest with ourselves, this isn't Annabeth. She fits more as Clarice if anything. Although ironically enough, this version has the best chemistry with Percy across all mediums. I've never really cared for Percabeth, at least until they went to Tartarus together, and even then, I feel like they could have just been friends. The show is more accurate to her character, so that's good. The dynamic in the show between the kids feels more stilted and awkward, again, because of the writing. Grover in the movie, though, is awesome. He's a total bro, actually competent, and pretty funny. I enjoyed his friendship with Percy and even Annabeth despite him being so wildly different. Grover in the show is actually pretty great too. They give him moments of relevance without it being too out of character while still retaining and downplaying his clumsiness. I found his interactions with Ares to be interesting and wholesome in a weird way. Ares is cool too, has a very punchable demeanor. I was actually okay with seeing Hermes early, and Lin-Manuel Miranda was a good choice. I didn't really think much of Hephaestus, mostly because his appearance was so unceremonious. It's weird to think that this guy will be Leo Valdez's father. Hades was fucking lame. It's not even the fact that he looks like a normal dude, it's that he has zero charisma. Dionysus was pretty cool and funny, it's just a shame we don't see much of him. Zeus was awesome. He's got a commanding presence while also still being petty and egotistical. I love the interaction between him and Poseidon, how his pride and his reputation made him insist on a war even though it would have been pointless, and how Poseidon was willing to surrender just to save Percy. It's a great way to show the personality of these two characters. The gods in the movie are more of the generic caricatures of the Greek gods usually seen in Hollywood. You know, like how the Olympians look more like they're from ancient Greece instead of regular people. Although I do like how they can change size, which is actually accurate to the book. And how Hades is evil and the underworld looks like hell. Honestly, the whole underworld section in the movie sucks. It looks uninspired. This version of Persephone, while admittedly kind of funny, is an inappropriate interpretation of the character. Hades is sort of charismatic, but not really what I'd call good, especially when he becomes this CGI monstrosity. And the way the conflict is resolved is just dumb. That's the biggest problem with the movie. Things just sort of work out through happenstance, and the plot progression feels sloppy. Like how they try to save Percy's mom from Hades, who wants the lightning bolt, even though they don't have it. The missing lightning bolt isn't even the main focus for most of the movie, and the main characters don't even talk about how they're going to fix that issue until it suddenly falls into their hands. It's also weird that Luke just gives them the flying shoes and even the bolt now that I think about it, because he really didn't have to. The flying shoes serve no purpose since they aren't cursed like in the book, and actually come back to bite him in the final battle against Percy. And there was really no reason to frame Percy for stealing the bolt. I don't know, maybe it's answered in the sequel, but it does lead to an epic final battle, so I'm okay with it. Them soaring through the sky, having a duel, the lightning bolt actually being used for once. This thing is never used once or mentioned again in the books, which I always found disappointing. Imagine it being used against Kronos or Gaia. And finally, this perfect scene of Percy controlling water and summoning a trident, which absolutely suits him. In fact, all of the water effects in this movie are cool and creative. The show just cuts away whenever Percy is about to use his powers or transitions to another scene, which is really anticlimactic and jarring. The final fight with Ares and later on with Luke is good too. It's a little short, but that's fine. I actually think the choreography in the show is way better than the movie. The movie's not bad, it's okay, and has better action set pieces, but the show's fights have a lot more energy and visually impressive stunts. In fact, a lot of the visuals in the show look amazing. The set design and locations are very imaginative, like Hephaestus' Carnival and Olympus. The underworld is way better in the show. It looks so cool. The cinematography too is consistently great throughout. There are some shots that look absolutely stunning. I especially love the shot when Percy gets teleported back to Camp Half-Blood in front of Thalia's tree. The movie has a much darker color palette, definitely more in line with the grim tone of the first book. In fact, it's too grim. Oh my god, it's so dark. Can someone get Helios or some shit? Or Iris. Maybe that's why it's so dark. She's not in this movie. The only standout scene is the Lotus Casino. The show's version was disappointing, but here, it's awesome. Camp Half-Blood looks fucking ugly in the movie. It literally just looks like a bunch of people hanging out in a dingy-ass forest. Camp Half-Blood in the show looks beautiful. I want to go to camp here, honestly. The cabins look sick. Anyway, back to Luke. He's a really difficult character to portray in writing, and even more so for acting. He's supposed to be this mature and responsible guy that's twisted with hate and inner conflict, but is also supposed to be this tragic and even a little pathetic character full of arrogance and condescension. Luke is such a complex character in the books, and one of the most impressive parts of the writing is that, for the most part, Luke's character shifts are very natural and believable, so I imagine it's really hard for the actors to play him. Thankfully, I think both do a great job despite how different their approach is. I gotta say though, I do think I like the movie version just a little bit better. I mean, okay, they make it kinda obvious that he's a thief, but I like his chill bro relationship with Percy. I like his slightly overconfident attitude. It's perfectly balanced enough that he doesn't feel completely evil or selfish, but you could also see how he would be willing to overthrow the gods because he thinks he's better than them. And I even like how they made him into a gamer. It's a neat addition to his character that makes complete sense. They never made it to the last Olympian, but I honestly think that after everything that happened with him and his mom, him escaping into the world of video games as a coping mechanism would fit really well. Also, it just makes sense that Luke would be a toxic petty gamer. He spends 5 books griefing Percy constantly. I also like to think that after the last Olympian, Hermes takes care of Luke's mom, or at the very least checks up on her from time to time, because the last time we see her, it was not very good. Anyway, the show's version of Luke definitely goes for the more humble route. He still puts on a dependable facade, and his interactions with Percy are nice, if short, but he also feels like he carries a lot of quiet anger that the movie doesn't touch on. Both are good, though. Ultimately, the changes made in both mediums were never offensive enough to detract from the enjoyment of the story, and act more like fun and unique alternative interpretations. The TV show does hold a lot more potential for continuing the story than the movie does. Like, it was really only the execution that was lacking, but that could improve in a new season. I have no goddamn idea how a sequel to this movie could adapt Sea of Monsters. Not gonna lie though, it makes me really excited to watch it, because Sea of Monsters is my favorite book in the entire series, and I'm sure with the universe that's been set up, this movie is going to be crazy. Beyond that, however, I don't know how the story would have progressed beyond that point. Like, it probably would have had to become a brand new story if it continued. Aw man, what if they kept going all the way to Heroes of Olympus? Like, imagine these films creating their own versions of Nico D'Angelo or Leo Valdez. That sounds hilarious. Children and young adult fantasy is a huge market, especially today, because of the numerous forms of entertainment available now. Even still, Percy Jackson and the Lightning Thief stands out as an original, amazing story with lovable, compelling characters and a creative twist on classic legends that carries many profound insights on our modern world and those that grow up struggling in it. It's still a worthwhile read 20 years later, and its 2 adaptations are no slouches either. There is no version of The Lightning Thief that isn't worth your time. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below.